All right. Hello, everybody. Glad to see all your faces. I just like to start with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge we are located today on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The territory is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. To honor this covenant, we will take up our responsibility to be respectful of the traditions, knowledge, and inherent rights as sovereign nations. We will respect their relationship with these lands and recognize that our connection to this land is through the continued relationship with these First Nations, and we acknowledge our shared responsibility to respect and care for the land and waters for future generations. I'd like to introduce you all to Jason O'Brien, who is with us today. He is a graduate of OCAD from in the illustration program at OCAD, and he has had his work in lots of private collections, but also showcased publicly at local auctions, fundraisers, exhibitions, and has been featured on the book cover for Deirdre Berry's The Next Best Thing, and has been shown in the TV show Queen Sugar, which is kind of cool. I don't want to give too much away. Jason's here to talk about himself, so I will let him do that. So over to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking a bit of time out of your evenings to spend it with me, listening to me talk about myself, which doesn't happen too often. So my ego is feeling really, really good right now. So thank you for that. But no, in all truth, this is not something I do very often. In fact, it's not something I've really done with regards to having an intimate, dialogue or discussion about myself as an artist, my artist journey, and my work with a live audience. So this is kind of new for me, and I'm excited. Just keep it really light, informal, as if we're at a coffee shop, a bunch of friends hanging out, and I'm talking about myself. So at any point in the presentation, if you have a question or you'd like to ask me, about something that I just spoke on, please don't hesitate to interrupt me, because I don't mind you interrupting me, so I don't have to hear myself all the time. Good. All right. So let's get started. So my name is Jason O'Brien, and I'm a visual artist, painter, illustrator. And as you heard at the top of the presentation, I'm also a graduate of the Ontario College of Art and Design University right here in downtown Toronto. I also, in my 9-to-5 professional career, I work for BMO, Bank of Montreal. And the reason why I'm even here today is because of our good friend Trisha, who made me aware of this opportunity to come in and speak to an audience about my artwork for this fantastic series of talks that you're having with artists. So, but in my 9-to-5, I work for BMO Bank of Montreal, and in my role capacity there, I am an instructional designer, or what they refer to as a learning experience designer. What that means is I design and deliver solutions for training and learning within the BMO financial institution. So I'm in a creative capacity in a design sense. However, in parallel with that, since I've always had a professional career, I've always been maintaining my arts career on the I don't say on the side, I always say in parallel, because they've been two different streams that I've existed in for quite some time, and I've always found a way to somehow create some balance and continue to do both. So we can go to the next slide and get right into the presentation. Okay, so I'll first start off with what I refer to as my ethos. My brand, when I started really kind of leveling up my professionalism and sort of just kind of creating my artist brand. Life as a canvas, art is my imprint is sort of the tagline that I have with my artwork. And it ties into my ethos that it describes my commitment. Whoa. Kind of blocking. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it describes my commitment to leaving a mark on this grand canvas that we call life. And my imprint are the unique artworks that I will leave behind long after me, that will hopefully inspire and give hope to those who decide to bring it into their lives. So when I think about life being a canvas, I think about that just not in just in reference to myself as an artist, but to all of us, right? We all have an opportunity in life to use life as our canvas to make our mark and leave our mark in whatever way we decide to do so. Mine so happens to be art. So every piece of work that I create is a validation and a declaration that I am alive, that I am here, that I existed, and it'll be my imprint long after I'm gone. And that's kind of what I keep in mind with my work. I want to create pieces that will sort of live on long after myself and continue to deliver messages of hope and love and sort of optimism. Okay. All right, we can move to the next one. Showing some of my early inspirations. Again, I've always been artistically inclined ever since I was in elementary school. I mean, I think anyone who's known me throughout the years has always identified art as part of my personality and part of my character. I've always been known as the kid in class who had abilities to draw and paint naturally. So in kind of the path that sort of led me into really kind of becoming an artist a bit more seriously, um things like as you see, looking from left to right, comic books played a huge part in sort of my inspiration around just my imagination, allowing my imagination to run into worlds and places that obviously didn't exist in the real world, but it expanded my imagination into other worlds that could potentially exist. I also appreciated the artwork, the musculature and the detail in how these artists, these talented artists, were able to sort of depict the human form, and translate that into these, incredible, impactful, comic book, visuals. So you'll see that influences of that have also made its way into my work. 90s R&B and hip hop. A lot of my work tends to be influenced by feeling, words, titles. You'll notice in the bottom left-hand corner, and a lot of people don't really know this, but for myself, my artwork inspirations or my pieces usually come from the title first. So words, poetry, lyrics play a huge part in what my artwork becomes. A lot of artists tend to paint a painting first, and whether they know what they're going to title it or not, they paint the painting first and then they'll title it after, or they might just leave it as untitled number 5 or number 4. For myself, my painting always starts with a title, either something that I've heard someone say, something that I read, something that I heard in a song, something that I felt when I looked at another painting. There's just a lot of different things, but words play a huge part. So that tends to drive the direction of where my imagination goes to actually create these pieces. And also, for myself, my artwork tends to be my poetry in visual vocabulary, because a lot of my work carries messaging that I, want to be sort of opening either a question, posing, suggesting something, a particular reality, or giving sort of my take on certain scenarios that revolve around love, humanity, optimism, spirituality, those types of things. Looking across the top right-hand corner, those are some of my artist influences. So Kadir Nelson, Paul Goodnight, obviously Basquiat. At the time during the 90s as well too, there was sort of an awakening in sort of, like obviously like Black culture and in hip hop, and sort of the idea of returning back to certain embracing cultures that that come from Africa, and just sort of self-identity and Black love and these types of themes. So again, infused through hip hop, infused through magazine covers that you see there, music that my parents used to listen to, whether it be, Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, any of the Motown collection. So you'll notice as well too that the theme of Afros is a very prominent recurring feature in a lot of my work as well too. And I think I've always just been fascinated by the icon, by the power of the icon of the Afro. I mean, I also had one myself growing up as a kid. So it's something that's very familiar to me. It feels comforting. And it reminds me of my parents and relatives that I grew up around as well too, who had them back in the day. So just a lot of different things. And there's fashion, there's all types of things, but really in sort of summarizing this particular slide, words and lyrics do play a big part in my work. Okay, can go to the next slide now. Thanks. As mentioned before, Ontario College of Art and Design, right here in downtown Toronto, is where I graduated in 1995. And I received my diploma in communication and design with an emphasis on illustration. So the natural talent and abilities that I demonstrated when I was in high school around, around art, I made the decision after leaving high school that I was going to go to a post-secondary arts institution and really formalize my training and really sort of take the natural skills and abilities that I was demonstrating and, get formal training so that I understood certain concepts that I was already doing, but I didn't have maybe a formal framework or way to identify what it was that I was doing. So things like, composition, light, shade, drawing the musculature. All these things are things that were formalized at the Ontario College of Art and Design and helped me shape and hone sort of my voice and sort of the materials and the mediums that I felt most comfortable working in. Acrylic and canvas and mixed media are my main mediums that I tend to work in, and I like to work on big, large canvas, generally, 3 feet by 4 feet size canvases, because I like to try and work big so I can get the whole motion of my arm into the work as much as possible. But OCAD was an incredible time that I spent there. And again, it holds fond memories for me. And it really kind of led me on my path to really, taking my artwork to the next level after I graduated. Okay, can move to the next slide. So recently, I had been called upon by OCAD to come back as an alumni to participate in this particular campaign called the Get Paid to Do What You Love campaign. And it entails every year they feature 6 graduate professionals who are applying, any skills or knowledge that they acquired from OCAD-U and who are now applying it in their chosen industry. For myself, I happen to be in the financial banking service industry, and I am taking the skills that I learned at OCAD and I'm applying them in my current role, where there's a need for creativity and design and sort of visual in creating, training material and solutions that are visually engaging for learners. And they also like the fact that I was still in parallel building my art career as well too. So it was an opportunity for OCAD to be able to, I guess, use me as an example of someone who, went to an art school, but then also is still working in a very high paying profession or industry, dispelling the myth that anyone who goes to art school or sort of takes the path of the arts will never get a real job or will never be able to really make any real money. So that couldn't be anything further from the truth. And it was great to see that they saw value in my story and they selected me to be part of the campaign for this year. And it was great because this campaign was all over the TTC. It was on billboards. It was on the
Dundas Square.
Dundas Square. Yeah, it was
a giant billboard.
Yeah. So for the month that the campaign ran on, I probably annoyed a lot of people who were probably sick of seeing this poster all over the place, but it was great. And the painting that I have in the poster that you see there is probably my most popular paint, not even probably, it is without a doubt my most popular marquee painting titled Rainbow. So if every artist, could have a Mona Lisa, this would essentially be my Mona Lisa. And you'll see why. It's my most well sort of advertised and sought after limited edition print out of all of my catalogs of work. And that's the actual original canvas. And we shot that right downtown in Toronto in the intersection of King and Bay. When the streetcars went by, we ran out into the middle of the street, took the shot, and then took the canvas and ran back to the sidewalk. The reason why the canvas has since sold, but the reason why I'm able to still have access to it is thankfully it was my cousin who purchased it at one of my previous art gallery shows, and it's great to know that it's still in the family and I can have access to it whenever I want. So that was a great campaign and a great experience as well too. So yeah, we don't choose between careers on Bay Street or art. We do both, and that's my story. We can go to the next slide now. Thank you. Just showing some images of me in the studio, looking dead center. That's a photo shoot that I had done quite a few years back with a photographer friend of mine named Jelani Morgan. And we somehow got all of my paintings downtown into his studio and set them up for this documentary sort of portrait style picture that he had taken of me. And it's great. A lot of those pieces have since sold and are no longer accessible to me. So it was probably one of the few times I had, a good body of all of my work around me at the same time. I'll take a moment to pause and breathe there for a moment. Are there any questions or comments so far at this point?
Andrea raised her hand.
Oh, yes. Andrea, please. Sorry. Oh, I can't hear anything if she's speaking. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay.
We,
There you are.
the iPad is raising our hand
Yeah,
without
permission.
permission.
Yeah.
So we apologize.
No problem. No
But I
problem.
saw that big Dundas Square. I ran down there one time, Jason, and I did see your painting when I was up there. As soon as you mentioned that,
Oh,
I just
nice.
said, wait a minute, I saw that one morning at 6 a.m. when I was running. So anyways, nice to say hello.
Very cool. Very cool. Thanks, guys, for confirming that. Like I said, at least, everyone in my various circles have all seen it at one point. And to be quite honest, everyone's seen it probably more than I did. I never got to see any of the signs off of the highway. I really just saw the one that was down at Dundas Square on the big billboard, but it was great. It's not very often you get to see your name up in bright lights. So that was my milestone moment for sure. But yeah, so those are just some shots of me in the lab, just kind of working and doing what I do.
But I have a question, Jason.
Sure.
How long would it take you to do one of those pieces? Like how much time would you
good
spend
question.
on one?
On average, about 4 to sometimes 6 months. And the reason for that is because I wasn't doing my artistry full time and I had to balance it with my 9-to-5 professional career, I would have to look for opportunities or windows on the weekend to, just sort of, paint. And a lot of times it would be a full day from say 8 a.m. in the morning on a Sunday to 8 p.m. at night, just straight work to try and move these pieces. Because as you can see, they're rather large canvases as well too. So with a lot of detail. So I did really kind of take anywhere from 4 to 6 months around to complete either pieces that you see of that size. And the canvases behind there are about 3 feet by 4 feet, or 36 by 40 by 48 inches. Acrylic on canvas.
I had a question about the size of your work, actually, since you're discussing, I was keeping it in my head, but I'll speak it now. I was just wondering, do you prefer large canvases or do you ever work in smaller pieces, or what's your?
I
a
prefer
lot of
larger
big
canvases.
pieces.
Yeah. As you can see in the top right-hand corner,
They're
like
beautiful.
I like getting my whole shoulder. Like I like using the full range of my entire shoulder to really get into a piece of work. I find that the smaller I go in size, the less of my shoulder I use, and it's more of the wrist and forearm, and it gets a bit tighter. So I like having the option and the flexibility to kind of be, broad in the surface area that I'm painting on, and so I can really get into the canvas physically along, because
Have you ever done murals?
I haven't, and I have been asked many times before, you know, if it would be something I would be interested in. And number one, generally, I don't have the time to work on a mural. Like I would literally have to block myself off for a month or two in order to, because obviously you're working at a scale and a size that's very big. And it requires, you know, essentially you to be working on it on a sort of a consistent basis. But for me, I think the sweet spot was for me to just, you know, work on canvas sizes. I mean, that size that you see there, it was all that could fit in my kitchen, because my studio, people would often ask, where is my studio? Where can they come down to my studio? And my studio was in my kitchen of my condo. I had a 600 square foot condo in Scarborough, you know, years ago. And I used to paint right there in my kitchen, and I used to try and make everything work. So I'd have these huge canvases and paints all over the kitchen sink and stuff. And that was my studio. So I wouldn't go any bigger than this. And yeah, and murals, you know, unless I was retired and all I had to do was focus on my artwork, you know, 24/7, which is my end goal, then I would absolutely consider that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the questions, guys. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so now we can get into some of the pieces. So I've made a selection of some of the pieces from my portfolio, and you know, I have the descriptions for them up there on the screen. All of the descriptions for the work are written by myself, and as I mentioned before, my artwork serves as my vehicle to sort of, you know, make a statement, pose a question, you know, or just maybe provide what I believe to be, you know, the answer to something. So this particular one, Rainbow, you know, the very essence of beauty, you know, all her hopes and dreams and promise for a better tomorrow resonate through her vibrant hair. Her spirit rises deep from within and flourishes in all the colors of the rainbow. She has loved, she has lost, and she has found her rainbow again. No hardships can hold her down, for she is a phenomenal woman, phenomenally. And as mentioned before, this was featured on the dramatic TV show created by Oprah Winfrey and Ava DuVernay called Queen Sugar. The producers came across my work, and they requested for them to be able to use this image in the background of one of the sets for the characters on the show. And it was a piece of artwork that was up on her wall in the series. So, and ever since that piece debuted on the TV show, I was getting so many requests and orders from the States. I mean, most of my, a good portion of my collectors and my audience stateside. Because I think collecting artwork and collecting, you know, artwork with Black themes and Black concepts is obviously, the market is massive in the United States. So they are obviously very drawn to my work, and this is one of my most sought after limited edition prints, you know, without a question, since anything that I've ever painted. So, but yeah, Rainbow, that's her.
So was it the word rainbow that inspired the painting, or because like how you were saying you start with a word or a song or a...
Yeah. So for this particular one, this title actually came out during the painting itself. So once I was kind of working on it, the hair originally was going to be all red, but then I decided to make a creative decision to change it and create something that was going to be a bit more than just sort of the expected. I wanted something a bit more unexpected. So once I started playing with more colors in the hair, then I said, you know what, I think rainbow is sort of what's coming or speaking to me from this piece. And strangely enough, this particular piece almost broke me as an artist, because I had originally painted something completely different underneath it. And I didn't like it, painted over it. And this is what you're seeing here right now. It was very difficult because I almost walked away from this piece so many times and I was going to discard it. But for whatever reason, I, you know, continued to commit myself to finishing it, and I did, and I'm glad that I did, because it's my, you know, my most popular piece to date. So, okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, so this one's called Found in Translation. And again, and a lot of times my work tends to be manifestations of things that I just, just maybe think about in my head, thoughts, that will just kind of come into my head. And this particular piece, was really sort of the idea. I mean, I think many of you probably know the movie Lost in Translation, right? Everyone's familiar with that movie, Lost in Translation. I forget who's in it. I don't know if it's Nicolas Cage or whatever, but anyways, I heard the title for the movie and immediately I was thinking Lost in translation. So what if, I was to look at the opposite of that and think about something that was found in translation? So I was kind of moving on with that train of thought. And then I created this piece that shows, the idea of this, and I create these characters. A lot of them are just fictional, but they're vehicles for me to be able to deliver the message that I'm trying to get through in the piece. So in this particular piece, it's a woman, no, particular person connected to myself, but I think the idea is that as human beings, we can all relate to the idea or the message of what I'm trying to say in this particular piece. So the idea of transitioning through different life stages, she's lived many different realities of herself, losing pieces and then building back pieces until she's ultimately found and reclaimed herself whole again. This has been a very powerful piece for collectors who seek my work, because I get a lot of feedback from people who've purchased this piece saying that this particular piece of work found them at the right time in their life when they needed that particular message or something that visually represented what they were feeling or what they were going through. And again, because it's such a broad sort of theme, it can be applicable to so many different, unique individual circumstances that people are going through. So Found in Translation, I think, is one of those pieces that sort of helps people build themselves back. Very similar to Rainbow as well, too. So I think, the appeal of these two pieces is that, they're very focused on, what it feels like to be human and what it feels like to be vulnerable. And the idea that, although we face hardships or difficult circumstances, there's always a way for us to look towards building ourselves back or becoming whole again. So those are the kind of messages that I want to sort of leave through my work. Go to the next one, please. Solid State Unbreakable. So this piece actually represents one of the first completely 100% digital illustrations that I did. And during the pandemic, I needed to switch my method of operation because I didn't have the time, working from home, with a toddler and my wife, to be able to set up my paintings and my paints. I mean, it takes me literally an hour just to even get set up before I can start painting. So, and during the pandemic, our lives just kind of merged into one stream, work, life, balance was just kind of, it was all one thing. And it was very difficult to sort of, structure my time. So I needed to find a quicker and more efficient way for me to still work and still create and also go from concept to product quicker. And it was the final push that I needed to finally move towards looking at investing in an iPad and learning, the different techniques and programs that allow artists that are working completely digital to create these incredible works of art. So this piece is completely 100% digital, and it's called Solid State Unbreakable. It's reflective of just sort of everything that was going on during the pandemic and the fact that, we were all living in this surreal state. It was very stressful, not knowing kind of what to expect. No one seemed to know what was happening. You didn't really know, when we were going to go back to work, when we were going to be able to see each other again. There was just a lot going on. So it made me think about the idea of how do you fortify yourself in those circumstances? How do you kind of protect, and guard yourself as best as you can to try and sustain yourself through these types of difficult periods? So I came up with the concept of solid state. The title of Solid State is something that kind of, came into my mind. for those of you who are who've seen Star Wars, you'd probably relate it to Han Solo. When Han Solo got suspended in that frozen state, and he was in that block. So it's that
Frozen
same sort of.
carbonite.
Yeah, that's right. Right. So in this particular piece, the idea is that, a strong and solid mindset is more than simply refusing to quit. True strength of mind and heart comes from a combination of awareness, focus, and resiliency, and a belief that you are unbreakable in the face of negative thoughts or adversity. Your struggle is temporary, so let nothing erode your resolve to achieve your greatness, and always be unbreakable in your resolve to succeed. So again, just really delivering these messages of you're vulnerable, you may bend, but do not break. And this is just sort of the idea of the union between mind, body, and soul, and finding that place within yourself where you are unbreakable. You are a solid state, and there's nothing external that can destroy you or that can erode you or your purpose or the path in life that you're headed towards, whatever that is for you. Just you need to be in that solid state. And so this was the piece that I created under that sort of that theme or that concept.
I have a question,
Sure.
Jason. Did you find with this particular piece, was it, because you described before how you love to use like your like a big canvas, your shoulder, your arm into it, so it must have been quite an adjustment. And how, like, is it a same amount of time creating digitally versus like what would you say, like how it must have been such a different experience?
Yeah, great question. It's a lot more efficient in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that I really sort of, grew to love about working digitally is how forgiving it is. If I needed to change a color or I needed to undo, right? We're all very familiar with undo a mark or a mistake or a direction that I was taking and then go back. I could do that so quickly and change and pivot and change directions, with my iPad. Whereas working on Canvas, if I needed to change the background color or something, it's a lot more involved to be able to try and sort of paint over it and then paint, like erase it and then paint back over it and try to, change the color of the background. Because if it's a big canvas, that means that I'm now, spending even more paint to try and correct that. Materials aren't cheap. So, I have to be very mindful of how I'm using my materials and how I'm applying it to the canvas. But with this, it's very forgiving, and I'm able to, create a lot of different versions, and I'm able to sort of create my thumbnails and work out my compositions and resolve a lot of issues a lot quicker digitally than I would have been able to with Canvas. I've also recognized that there's, things that I learned in how I'm applying color and texture in working digitally in the iPad that I think is going to translate very well when I do go back to painting large canvas scale as well too, because I think it's helped me sort of make a lot of connections on how I can do things differently and how I can apply paint and color differently to my subject. So it's been good. It's been really good. And I think it was a necessary step that I needed to take. And I was a bit sort of procrastinating. But the pandemic actually pushed me towards something that I think has worked really, really well for me. Now I can take things that are digital and I can combine, a piece that's digital, printed on canvas, and then I can then start applying paint to it and then working in mixed media. So now I can combine the two and start producing, these really, really cool collaborative pieces as well. Okay, we can go to the next piece now. Okay, so this one's called The Seed. And again, acrylic on canvas and mixed media. You can't really tell from the image, but there's a lot of really nice texture and detail in the background of this piece. Texture is something I like to work with a lot in my work, and I use a palette knife to sort of apply the paint And I do them in various layers so that as I continue to apply more and more paint, it creates these really bumpy, surfaces and crevices and whatnot. And the paint just sort of like, it's almost like buttering toast, if that makes any sense, right? It kind of like, it catches the texture of the painting in the back, and I'm able to sort of create these nice textures. But this piece was really cool. The idea of this is I wanted there to be a nice contrast between the textures that you're seeing in the background and the geometric patterns with this, this man who's in this sort of embryonic sac, kind of like in a state of bloom. And yeah, so I wanted there to be sort of that contrast between, him being in this sack, and everything else around him is supposed to be kind of representative of soil, in a visual representative type of way. But again, the messaging in this one is that, we are all seeds of immense potential, but when is it our time to bloom? What life events must take place in order to trigger our awakening and begin the process of unfolding towards our ultimate purpose. The seed speaks to the state of transcendence and euphoria that can occur when we awaken to our self-worth and allow our full potential to bloom. So in this particular piece, he's at that tipping point where something has just happened, or something has just triggered exactly what needed to release that realization that I'm now going to be what I'm supposed to be, what I'm meant to be. His seed is now blooming, right? And this is something that's applicable to all of us. Like, we're all seeds of immense potential, and so many different types of potential, not just one particular type. So that's the idea behind this particular piece. Okay. This one is called When My Soul Dreams, and this work is referred to as a triptych. Some of you may already know what a triptych is, but a triptych is when you have 3 canvases that are brought together to create a larger canvas. So in this particular case, I have 3 canvases. So this entire piece was about 9 feet by 3 feet. So it was very big, and I debuted it at the Royal Ontario Museum as part of a larger collaborative show with a bunch of other artists as part of an event that was happening in Black History Month. I can't remember the year. I think it was 2010. So what's really cool about this piece is that it's the most expensive piece of work that I've sold to date. This was actually purchased by Scotiabank. And they now have this as part of their private corporate art collection, because the woman who's in charge of that procuring works of art or investing in works of art, her name is Jane Noakes. She absolutely fell in love with the piece, and they approached me with an opportunity for them, with a request for them to purchase it, and we made that happen, and it was great. This particular piece is one where I didn't really plan in advance sort of what I was going to do. I just kind of started working from left to right and just kind of, decided, where it was going to go, where it was kind of, pushing me or signaling that I needed to go. So this particular piece, When My Soul Dreams represents my journey into the unknown. By unknown, I mean no planning or premeditation went into producing this triptych piece. I simply abandoned myself to the creative process and allowed my intuition to lead the way. There's no beginning, no end, no narrative, no message, just reflections of my mind's inner thoughts when I'm free. All right. So this piece kind of represents me just free falling into, whatever happens. And I think it turned out quite well. And I'm very, very happy that it ended up selling in the end. So that was great. Okay. Go to the next one. Solitude. So this is one of my new works. The actual original painting for this, I did sell back in 2008, but I recently digitally remastered it for fine art reproductions, which I'm now selling through my online gallery site. But this piece, Solitude, I really, really, really love. And again, my same family member who owns Rainbow, she also owns this piece as well too. So I'm very happy to say that I do have access to this still. But as you can see there, in solitude, my chaos rests, my inner peace awakens. In solitude, I heal, I find my answers, and I connect to the source and fortify my soul. So it's that idea about just finding a place where you can just sort of be quiet, be still, be calm, no vibration, just you and your thoughts, and the opportunity to reflect and just sort of connect to some source that gives you fortification or strength. And that's what you're seeing in this. The symbol that you see in the rising sun behind there is a West African icon or symbol, which translates to the ram's horns. But it's a symbol that represents, and it's a Ghanaian symbol, and it represents strength and humility, speaking to the idea that even the strong also need to be humble. The rising sun is representative of new hope and the dawn of a new day and optimism. The pillars that you see on the side is just sort of is indicative of balance and symmetry. And the water below that you see there is the idea that he's connecting to the source, that he's taking an opportunity to reflect, to heal, and connecting to the source. And you can see that he's illuminating in his solitude. So, okay, go to the next one. This piece is titled Illuminated Whisper. And again, this piece is sold, again, 3 feet by 4 feet canvas, acrylic on canvas. Very similar to the treatment that I applied to the seed in the background. You're seeing very similar geometric shapes and kind of the application of the paint. But this piece, again, to me is very powerful. And it speaks to the idea of, when words touch your ears, how it can trigger, mentally, but also physiologically, you to illuminate with either knowledge or a larger sense of understanding. But it illuminates you is the idea. And whatever it is that she's whispering into his ear is causing him to illuminate sort of the painting that's behind him, which is why you're seeing it sort of kind of gradiating out in white. That's sort of the idea, the idea of how words can touch and help us to evolve our mind and move us, not only emotionally, but spiritually as well too. So that's the idea behind Illuminated Whisper. Okay, you can go to the next one. So this piece is called The Vessel, a very, very powerful piece. And again, it's acrylic on canvas. I really love the treatment in the background that I did with this. I really abused the canvas, as you can see, using my palette knife, carving into it, building up textures, building up paint, layering paint, rubbing away, adding more. So I really, really, really wanted to sort of create a sense of kind of erosion or decay. But the idea in this is that our bodies are our vessels. And it plays on the idea that our bodies are a vehicle through our life's journey, and it's our chamber of strength. It's a barrier of protection, and it carries the safe transport of our most precious cargo, which is our soul. So in this, you're seeing sort of, a very strong musculature figure sort of fusing into this vessel, this ancient vessel type form, just indicating that the body and the vessel they're one. And as you can see, as I mentioned earlier on, when I mentioned that comic books, play a huge part in my love of the human form and musculature and seeing just sort of the structure of the human body and how the human body is able to communicate feeling and emotion. So you're seeing it now in my work, right? These are the types of things that kind of spoke to me as a child and have never kind of left, my artistic kind of sensibilities. So yeah, that one's The Vessel, and again, very, very cool, powerful piece. I'll pause for a moment to see if there are any questions or comments. Nope.
I've got one.
Sure, go for it.
In the painting just before this one, the Whisper, I think.
Yeah.
The Whisperer has red hair, and you'd mentioned that with Rainbow, you had planned that she would only have red hair, and I'm just wondering what the significance of red hair is.
You know what? It wasn't anything. There wasn't any significance other than, well, number one, I mean, the color red is a passionate color. It's a very emotional color. It's an emotionally rich color, and I think for myself, it was just about doing something that was different, unexpected. I think it was just an artistic decision that I made. And also because, as you can see, the right-hand side of the painting, the background is red. And I wanted her to sort of blend into that fraction of the piece so that she didn't stand out other than her facial features. Everything else I wanted to be sort of a bit more muted, a bit more into the back, because I wanted the tones that you see in her skin to be the focal point of where your eye leads to his ear. So I didn't want to bring too much attention to the color of the hair, and I left it sort of more blending into the background because I didn't want it to compete with the tones in her face and kind of her leaning into his ear. Yeah.
I think she's striking, and I think that, like, I mean, I get what you're saying that the red hair does, like, but I don't know. I just love it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. And it's just, and as you can see, like the reds are a very, very prominent color in a lot of my work, and blues and purples and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it was really just more that than anything else. And as you can see, sort of the jewelry that she has on her neck as well too. Again, just another added embellishment or detail that I added. And for me, what it is I like to include some of these finer, details that don't command your immediate attention, but command your secondary attention. Because I like when the viewer engages the work and they bring their own narrative or story to exactly what's happening or exactly what's being said, or exactly who these people are. I don't pretend that what I put out there as being the description for what this is the finite and absolute only description. I think it's whatever the viewer brings to the piece that really completes the piece in the end. And you bring your own meaning and value to what this is representing for you. So it's very similar to how an author would write a book and have a lot of very different, details and context and context in what they're writing. I like to just kind of add these little details so that the viewer has something to kind of hang their imagination on. Cool. Thanks for the question, Valerie. Okay, I know we got 10 minutes, so we'll keep going. Okay, so I think this is the last one. This is The Awakening. The Awakening is really cool. This is 3 feet by 5 feet. And again, it speaks, and as you can see, a lot of my work tends to have a very strong emotional undertones, very deep, moody type of themes. And again, tying back to, like the music that really kind of, inspired, the soulful, really kind of, so just soulful music. And if I was to imagine, what those songs would translate like into a painting, these are the kind of paintings that I try and create. This particular piece is cool because it puts forth the question of whether or not art can inspire and elevate our mind to higher places, to help us look back at ourselves with a renewed sense of hope and infinite possibility. The awakening is a tribute to the concept that within the mind lies the kingdom of our true potential, and art can serve as a catalyst to help unlock it. So again, if you've ever been to a museum or to an art gallery, and if you stood in front of a painting, whether you understood it or not, there is a reaction that you're having to that piece of work. And surprisingly, whether you're conscious or unconscious of it, sometimes there could be a work of art that just triggers something in you. whether you expected it or not. And the idea is that art can help open up the mind, and it can help take you to places that maybe in our current materialistic world we're not able to imagine or see. So the idea here is that he's standing in front of this work of art, but yet through the artwork, he's looking back at himself. And because it's sort of that awakening that's happening in his mind, and it's kind of opening up the kingdom of again, his potential or what he's meant to do, which is why you're seeing sort of the stars in the background there as well too, showing infinite space, right? So that's the awakening. Okay, we can go to the next one. Recent milestone, I think Valerie had mentioned it at the start of the presentation. This is the book cover that I recently did in collaboration with author Deidre Berry. She's a contemporary women's fiction author from Kansas City, Missouri. She's published a lot of short stories, screenplays, and poetry, and her book is now available on Amazon Kindle. But she had approached me on social media, being a big fan of Rainbow and also an owner of one of the limited edition prints. She loved it so much that she requested if she could have permission to be able to use it for her upcoming book. Or I think it was the 10th anniversary of re-release of her book, The Next Best Thing. So I said, absolutely, without a doubt. My work had never been published on a book up until this point. So it was a great opportunity for me to collaborate with another very, very talented creative, and it turned out fantastic. It turned out really good. So it's a great book as well, and it is also available on Amazon Kindle right now. Okay. And yeah, so I think we're coming into the train station now. This is all of my social media links where you can find me and follow me. You can share me. If you have your smartphone, you can just scan the flow code that you see there on the right-hand side, and it'll take you right to my Instagram page. And then you can follow me right from there as well too. A lot easier. And that's it, guys. Brings us to the top of the hour. And wow, that went by a lot faster than I imagined it would. So, geez. I think we have time for a few questions, Valerie. If anyone had any questions or comments, I'm open for business.
There was a question in the chat wondering, this is back earlier at the beginning of the conversation, but you'd mentioned that most of your like professional following, like who you sell to, sales is American. And they're just wondering if you think that there's like Canada has less of an interest in collecting from artists or Black artists, or why don't Canadians buy art?
That's a good question. I just think the market's bigger, right? You're talking 37 million versus 250 million. So the markets, the genres of work that people are looking for are a lot more vast, I think. And again, it's not to say that Canadians don't like artwork, but I think when it comes to Black artwork and sort of the market for that here in Canada, it's not nearly as established as it is in the United States. I mean, they have massive conventions in the States where people come from all over the United States to, different university arenas and stuff where vendors set up, or gallery vendors set up, their booths with, limited edition prints, sculptures, original artworks, and people come and they buy. There's nothing like that here in Toronto, that I'm aware of. And since I've been an artist working here for over 20 years now. So there's room to grow. And I think it's just something that organically happened because as people started collecting my work and talking more about my work and sharing it to other people. And then I think, again, when Rainbow showed up on the Queen Sugar TV show, then that kind of just, kicked the floodgates open, and then they came for me. Right, they came for me, and that's kind of what it is, and yeah,
love it.
Yeah,
Jen has a question.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you miss your art when it sells. Like, I'm really curious how you relate to these canvases that you spend so much time with and pour so much into.
Great question. No, I don't, because the way I see it is that, you know, the collectors who make the decision to invest their money into my work, they're investing a good amount of money. And therefore, I know that it's going to someone who truly wants it and obviously sees it as an investment, either in myself as an artist and, you know, and on my growth path, and also see it as an asset, you know, that means something to them that they're willing to bring into their home. Because my pieces range, my original works range anywhere from about 2,000 up to about 5,000. In general. So they're spending a few $1,000s. Again, the one that I sold to Scotiabank, I think that went for over 10,000, right? So people are investing money. It's not, they're not just dropping small amounts of money. So, and also in addition to that, any of the pieces that I sell, I also own the digital reproduction copies of them. So I'm able to, you know, create beautiful reproduction prints. I can apply it to products, merchandising, whatever I want, book covers. So I'm able to still use and work with the image as much as I want. But the original, once it's sold, I have no problems with it because again, I know that someone really, really wanted it if they're willing to invest that kind of money into it. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Jen.
Emmett?
Mm-hmm.
As in Trish. Sorry, I'm asking lots of questions. Did you find, you mentioned that you are a parent. Did you find that once that happened, was there a change in your style? Like we're all parents here.
Why do you think I switched to my iPad? Yeah, I don't have the time. I don't even have time to set up my work because there's as a parent, for those of you who are parents on this call, like, you know, like your time is always in demand and there's always tasks that need to be done, and to be able to try and fit in some time for me to be creative and to connect to my source, which is my work, my art, it became extremely difficult. So that's why I'm very, you know, very happy that I was able to discover at least something that I'm able to accomplish right now with my iPad. And it was good. Like I said, I think it was a necessary evolution in my journey as an artist that I needed to take that step to see exactly what digital could offer or bring to my work. Because when I go back to my canvas now, I'm able to really combine the power of both digital and the original canvas, and then, you know, and mixed media, and then really create something different than I've ever created before. So yeah, it's challenging, Trish, there's no question. But again, my wife and, you know, my daughter, they know that this is what I am. So when I need to carve my time out to try and do something, you know, they get it. Yeah.
I have another question.
Sure.
With your corporate job, like
Yeah.
how did that career evolution kind of happen alongside, like kind of in parallel with your art? Because you went to school for art, like clearly at high school, you were like, I'm going to paint. I want to know what I'm doing. But how did like the making money and like, how did that coexist?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that I never made any, I knew that in order for me to be able to be an artist, I needed to have a job. Right. I mean, you know, unless you're coming from a situation where you're independently wealthy and you have, you know, the comforts of you know, your financial situation and what have you, that you don't necessarily have to work and you can, no problem. For myself, I always knew that maintaining a steady, well-paying job was essential for me to be able to build my dream in parallel, not on the side, but in parallel, because things like artist materials cost a lot of money. You know, and being able to produce gallery shows, to be able to like, you know, self-produce my own shows, to be able to like, you know, get reproductions done, to be able to build a website, everything costs money. I didn't want to be an artist that had to rely on just bursaries or grants all the time. And also there's just certain things in life that I wanted, right? Like I wanted to have my own condo. Right. I wanted to be able to still, you know, do things like go on trips. I wanted to be able to buy clothes. Hell, I wanted to have a girlfriend. You cannot have a girlfriend being a starving artist. I'll tell you that right now. You can't. Like, you need to have more than just that. Like, you know, it sounds really cute and romantic, but you know, when the realities of life hit, you know, you need to be bringing something more to the table than just that, until obviously it takes off and goes where it needs to. So yeah, so I knew that I needed to build stability for myself, and I needed to build myself on sound grounding, sound ground, so that I could continue to build my art on the side, without having to worry about, you know, where my next grant or my next bursary was going to come from. So that's how I ended up getting into a situation where I was working in a full-time professional career, but then still working on my art on the side. But again, to me, my end goal eventually is for me to start ramping down professionally, so that I can ramp up full-time and become a full-time artist when I'm, you know, getting, hopefully before retirement. But, you know, the idea is that once I do decide to retire, I've already built something that I can now jump into and I can continue driving, and that I'll be doing full-time. Yeah. But the idea is for me is to not let the dream go, right? And I don't even like calling it a dream. I hate that, because it sounds so, you know, my purpose, right? I'm not letting my purpose go, because I need it in order for me to be able to really truly feel happy, to have my wellness, my balance. It's very important to me. So I recognize it as such. So therefore I try to nurture it and protect it as much as I can. Trish, question? You had a question? Or is that just a high five?
Your hands.
Oh, that's my old hand. Sorry, I forgot
I
to.
see. Okay.
My old hand.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I like how you, and I'll just add something. I just want to comment. I don't have any questions. You've been very informative. I wanted to say, I just really enjoy how you play with light and color and texture. And I've noticed with a lot of your pieces, which I enjoy, is that when I take a first glance at it, I see something, but it's enjoyable to continue looking at it, because I find that I'm not seeing everything at first glance. And so it's a kind of I just find looking at your pieces kind of to be a meditative kind of process in itself. And just thank you for sharing your work. I thought it was really beautiful, and I hope to see more of your stuff. So anyways, that's all, just a comment. Thank you.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you so much for that, because, and I'm glad that you actually did say that, because at any of my gallery showings, you know, when I've approached, you know, viewers who spent a lot of time just standing in front of my work, just sort of, you know, regarding it, you know, taking it in, having some like just an intimate moment with it. That's the feedback that I get. I think they appreciate the fact that their eyes can move in and out of the work. They can kind of roll over the textures that I have in the back, the small details. There's, and it's, I want my pieces to be, when I'm talking about my original canvases, I want my work to be pieces of artwork that whoever the purchaser or the owner is, they can keep coming back to it and find something different, you know, maybe a color of paint or a splotch of paint they didn't notice the first time, or a detail. I want them to be able to engage the work and spend time locked into the work and to feel it. So I'm glad that that's what's resonating for you and what's coming through, because I do make an intentional effort to add that into the work, which is why I know when people purchase the work and they invest in it, it truly is going to someone who wants it, and that work is doing something for them in order for them to bring it into their intimate space where they're going to be surrounded by it every single day. So so thank you for that. Thank you.
All right. Well, massive thank you, Jason. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your work with us. If anybody has any other questions or comments, or follow Jason, you had all his pluggables on screen. We can share them again as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Jason.
This was fun, guys. Thank you so much for your time and for your questions, and talk. Bye, everyone.
That was amazing. Thanks,
Bye,
Jason.
Guys, bye, Trish. I'll see you at work.
Yeah, it works.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
That's fine.